Hi guys, welcome to this week's first lesson. We're going back to practical work, so we're back at the implementation section of web design and development. So first of all, your starter, as before, please send your answer as a comment in Satchel 1. So what default font appears on the web pages that you're creating at home? What's the default font? Okay. Now, I thought I'd just quickly go over the learning intentions for today because I'm covering an awful lot today. We're going to learn about divs, and I'm going to use some inline styling and some external styling, but you could also do internal. We're going to look at the class selector, the ID selector. We're going to look at adding the ID and class selectors to divs. Then a slight backward step, we're going to look at adding ID and class selectors to tags. Then we're going to use an ID selector to create an internal hyperlink to another place on the same page. So maybe from the bottom of the page to the top or further down. And then we're going to have a quick look at HTML colors, HTML font sizes, and HTML fonts. So a div. What's a div? A division. So adding a div tag to a web page defines a division or a section in an HTML document and within your actual page. So the div tag is used to group elements together to format their styling with CSS. So here I've taken a little bit from the Big Cat's website. It's the navigation part, okay? And I've got an opening div. I've got a div selector class and the name navigation. Don't worry, we're going to come back to that. And I've got a closing div. But I've basically decided that that is a division, a section of my page that I could decide to do something styling on its own. Okay? So if you want to use div for styling, what we're going to do is we're going to make some separate divisions or sections in our HTML code to represent different parts of our web page by adding in open and closed div tags. So here's our Cricut web page from a few weeks ago now, a couple of weeks ago, and I've decided that it'd be quite cool to put an open div here and a closed div here around about this history of Cricut part. So that's this section of the web page. Also think it'd be pretty good to have a div, so an open div and a closed div, all about this bit about the teams, the best teams, and then that means that this section of my web page could have some styling applied to it. Okay, so inline styling first of all. If you change the HTML code, so where I've got my div that I just created, I can add style equals background color pale green. So I can literally put a style into the div. Okay, and then that means just from doing that, I've got the open closed div, that this whole section, the background color will change to pale green. Okay, so that's using inline styling with my div. I could also do something with the external CSS file. Okay, so my styles.css. If I add or change div background color orchid, if I add that to my styles.css file, so that means that this section here will turn into a background color of orchid. Okay, so that's two different ways. We've got the div. In the first div, we actually styled it in line in the tag itself. And this one, we've referred to it external styling, we referred to it in the CSS file. Okay, so that's the div tag. Now, one of the important things is trying to decide where you're going to put divisions. So look at the following code, and this is my Scotland webpage, and see if you can spot where we could create divisions. So I've thought here we've got the title, Scotland, we've got the map and the flag and a bit about the population. So I thought that could be a bit. Then there's a bit about the fun facts with the unordered list. Thought that could be a bit. Then here's the bit with my audio file and my video file. So I thought that could be a bit. So maybe that could be my intro section, fun facts section, and a media section. Okay. So now we need to add the divs to my code. So I have added the open and closed div around what could be my intro bit. I've added the open and closed div around my fun facts part, and I've added the open and close divs around my media section. And that would effectively be these particular parts of my web page. So it'd be this top part, this middle part, and the bottom part. I haven't got my hyperlinks inside a div, so I've not outlined them for you. So dividing your page up like this is a good way to be able to apply styles to sections of your web page. However, we need to give each of these divisions a name so that we can apply different styling to different divisions. And the CSS selectors that we're going to learn about, class and ID, are used to find or select the HTML elements that you want to style. And there are two that you need to know about, class and ID. Okay, class and ID. So we're going to look at class first. Classes are identified with a full stop in the CSS coding, and they can be used to identify a single section of code or similar groups of code. So we use classes all over the place. So my Scotland homepage, the HTML code, I could call my first two divisions info. So the bit where that's got intro section, it's got info, and then the other bit about the fun facts, I'm also going to call it info. So div class equals info. So I had put the divs in, but now I have given it the selector class, and I have given it a name of info, so I can refer to it in my CSS file, because I can add the styling, and I've said use a full stop. So full stop info, background color beige, font family Comic Sans MS. So in my CSS file, I'm referring to the class selector with the name info, and I'm doing it for two different divisions. And therefore, my page will look like this. So my Scotland home.html page, it's got the styling added. It's going to look like this. We've changed it to Comic Sans and beige for these two divisions. Okay, now for the ID. The ID selector is identified with a hash symbol in the CSS coding, and it can be used to uniquely identify a single section of code which only occurs once on the web page. That's really important. It's only once. It's like an important bit that you want to pull out, uniquely identify. So my Scotland homepage HTML code, I'm thinking that my bit all about the media, that only happens once. I'm going to make that an ID. So div, I've given it the selector ID and the name media. And in my CSS file, I add this styling. Hash, because it's an ID, media, background color thistle, and color dark violet. Okay, and then on my page, I now have that section, this division with the ID has changed the background color to thistle and the font color to dark violet. Okay, so what I can do, because I've got this class that I had of info, is I can add similar styling by adding a division to my other page, my Ben Nevis HTML page, and I can name the division as a class selector and call it info again. So here I've got div class info for the all about Ben Nevis and a little paragraph and the first picture. I've decided to make that a division. On my second page, I've given it the same, it's a class selector, I've given it the same name of info. And that means I don't need to add anything to my CSS file because I've already got class info, background color beige, font family Comic Sans MS. So when I actually apply that, save that information in here, it will change this division on my other page. Okay, so a little bit about these two selectors. We've got a class selector and we've got an ID selector. In your question paper, you might be asked, or you've shown some code and it's got dot something or it's got hash something, and you're literally asked which selector has been used, and your one-word answer would either be class or ID. Or it could be that you have to come up with the actual, dot something or hash something yourself in the code. So it's really important you know which is which. So if you think about it, a class at school has got lots of people in it. So class you can use lots of times. Whereas your ID is unique to you. Your personal identity is unique to you. And the hash symbol in America means number. So if you think hash 1 would mean number 1. You're number 1. Your ID, you're personally unique. You're number 1. So if you can try and remember, that's how helps me remember. Hash is for the ID, the one that only occurs once. Therefore the dot is for the class, full of lots of people, so you can use the class lots of times. Okay, so class can be used many times, but the ID, you can only use that once per web page. So, practical task for you. You're going to add divs, classes and IDs. So you've got to open up your country web pages and your styles.css file in Notepad++. Now, working only on your home page, I want you to add in some divs to your home page. So create a div for your audio and video section and use an ID selector. Then try and separate yourself. It's up to you how you do this. Separate the rest of your page into 2 or 3 divs, and you can use a class selector for them. Now, it doesn't need to be the same class selector. You can actually give it, you could put different names if you want. Then you need to add the CSS rules using the correct full stop or hash symbol to your styles.css file to style each of your divisions using the selectors. Now, you choose your own styling to use. Okay? So that's your practical task 1. Right, now, little backward step here. So using the selectors, class and ID, we can actually use them not just with divisions, but we can use them with specific tag elements of your page. For example, a paragraph, a heading 1, an unordered list, etc. So what I've done here is I have gone for my H1, which says all about Ben Nevis, and I've given it the class heading. I've also gone down to my H2 heading, heading, interesting facts about Ben Nevis, and I've also given it a class with the name heading, and the same with this H2 heading down here. And I've come up with another class called list for my unordered list about some information about Ben Nevis. Okay, so the selectors and the tags, if I add this code to my CSS file, so my dot heading, so anything that's the class heading will be the color red, and dot list, anything in the class list will be background color brown and color white. Okay, that's these parts here. Then you'll see the following web page. So what's happened is my H1 and my 2 H2s have gone red, and then this section here that I gave the class of list has got a brown background and it's got white font. Okay, so your second practical task is to add classes and IDs to tags. Okay, so you've hopefully already got your web pages open, and this time working only on your geographical feature page, I want you to add some classes or IDs, remember you can only do an ID once, to some of your maybe H1, H2, UL, anything you can find on the page, could be a paragraph, and then add CSS rules to your styles.css file to style each of your tags using the selectors. And you again choose whatever styling, whatever colours you want to do. Now when you're doing all of this styling, you might need to remove some of the styles that you already had, okay, some of the colours and things that you already had. Okay. Now the next thing, it's straight on to another practical task, internal link within a page. Now it's a bit of fun for you. I mentioned this I think last week, and then somebody brought it up in a tutorial, how do you do this? So I thought, well, I better show them. And the reason I better show you is because it actually came up in an exam question, so I really want you to see this. So add code to your HTML file to create an internal hyperlink to go back to the top of the page. Now, at the top of my page I had an H1 that says Scotland. Okay, so you're going to use an ID selector and an internal hyperlink. And then when we come to test this, we better make sure that we've got quite a small page so we can scroll down. Okay, so this is all you have to do. At the top, now I did this on my main country page. For my H1 at the top, where it says Scotland, I've put in an ID called top of page. And then at the very bottom, before my switch off body, I've got an anchor hyperlink reference to the ID called top of page. And then this is what it's been linked to, the words click here to go to top of page. That's the words, that's the anchor. When the user clicks on these words, it's going to be a hyperlink that will take them to hash top of page. Okay, so let me just show you how that works. So here is my Scotland web page, and if I make it a little bit shorter, if I scroll down my web page, here at the bottom is a link, click here to go to top of page. When I click on that, it jumps to the top of my page. Prove that again, scroll down and click, and it jumps to the top of the page. There's actually something else I'd like to mention just while we're on this screen. When you're taking your screenshots to send to your teacher, be very careful that you don't take the screenshot in the full screen mode, because this is all wasted space over here, okay? And when that's copy and pasted into a Word document, it means that all the writing and everything, all the detail over here gets really, really small and very, very difficult for us to read. So make sure that you minimise it down. Now, as you go across, the wording changes, it all fits for you. So just bring it over to a nice sort of sensible size. Take your screenshot of that, and then you've all been really good at scrolling down and then taking your other screenshot and sticking that underneath. So just be careful of that you don't accidentally give me all this extra stuff and make this almost too small for me to see. Okay, so moving back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so just a little, I don't think I made this totally clear. You're anchoring the hyperlink reference, which is #top of page, to the words click here to go to the top of the page. Now, #top of page, that could have been home.html, that could have been https www.bbc.co, etc, etc, etc. Okay, and basically the hyperlink reference will take you to whatever you've got here in the quote marks, and in this case it is an ID called top of page, which is going to take you up to the word Scotland at the top of my website web page. Okay, right, now I just want to move on to a little bit to colours. Okay, a little note about colours. By the way, there's an underscore here and there's an underscore here, okay, if you were typing these out, but you just type them in your browser. Now you guys, I've been showing you colour names almost exclusively up until now, and there are 140 of them. Just type in HTML colour names and you will get your list. But there are lots of other ways of showing colours on or picking colours on your web page. And there's this other method here. It's hash, not to do with ID, but hash values. And then there are 6 digits after this, 6 characters, ranging from 0 up to 9 and A up to F. It's something called hexadecimal. Now, I don't want to explain anything about it because there's a really, really good YouTube video that I found for you. Now, I've put the link for this down in your notification and show my homework. It's 4 minutes and 21 seconds. Please watch it. It is excellent. Okay. A little note about text sizes. There's 3 ways that you can specify the size of your font on your web page. I've tended to just do 15 pixels or whatever, but you can also do it as a percentage. You can also do it as large. Now, I'm going to assume they're small. Wonder what the one in between is. But you can experiment with those, with the font sizes on your web page. Another thing is font families. Now, the best web-safe fonts for HTML and CSS are these ones here. Okay. But to be sure that your web pages display the font you want and not a default, you can choose a fallback font. And I'll come back to that just in a second. Fallback font. So here's a summary of what I want you to do for me today. Or, sorry, over the next couple of days. Send your answer to the starter in a comment to section 1. Send me the Word document after you've done all 3 of those little practical tasks, showing your code and the screenshots for your 2 country web pages and your CSS file after you've done all 3 practical tasks. Now, remember, make the web page window smaller before you take your screenshot. And I've got a theory task sheet for you. So, WDD implementation, task sheet 7. CSS rules. So, better show you that, just so you know what you're doing with that one. Okay, so for each of the questions below, write the CSS rule to format each tag. The first one has been done for you as an example in each page. So each page has got 4 questions, but the first one has been done for you. Format the P tag selector to be Times New Roman, size 18 pixels. If Times New Roman is not installed, kind of a backup, Batang should be used. The text colour is to be yellow, the text to be centre aligned, and use the hex colour #6495ED to format the background. Okay, so here is our P tag. Here are curly brackets, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, and all the information is there. Now, you have got to be accurate when you come onto your 3 examples. You need to get the right tag or ID or class that you're applying the styling to. You've got to be open and close curly brackets. Remember, in between them, you should have semicolons in between any of these attributes with their properties. Don't forget that you've got the colon between the attribute and the property. etc. Okay, and then there are 3 examples for you to do. On the second page, format for each of the questions below, write the CSS rule to format each ID. The first has been done for you as an example. So we'll have hash, adverts, and then similar sort of information. There's 3 more for you to do. And then the last page on this task sheet, for each of the questions below, write the CSS rule to format each class. The first one's been done for you as an example. So format the Kahoot class to be etc. And then, because it's a class, it's the full stop and then the name of the class. And then you've got to do the rest. Okay, so that is your submission. This is a summary of your submissions. And that's all I've got for you guys. So good luck, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.